for women engineers, I think it has to start from young. But one of the things that I noticed when I was growing up was if you watch a lot of children's TV show back in our time, they are very gendered. Like spinning toys are only for boys. Mecha and cars are only for boys. So about like the girl who really likes car and wants to be an F1 driver, like we shouldn't be assigning genders to toys. That's one of the things. Like children should be free to do any kind of activity that they are interested in. I think one of the things that I heard when I was growing up was, Shi Ling, why you like video games so much, or why do you like computers so much? It's very tomboy. How are you gonna get a boyfriend? All the guys will think you're not cute. Like, good thing I didn't care, so I just did it anyway. I just did my own thing anyway. But there's a lot of women who care about these kind of comments. So I think that's what turned some women off in like pursuing, even though we're really good at science or really good at engineering, that what turned people off from like being perceived as a nerd by like stop being interested in like nerdy topics. Yeah, so that's I think that's where we can start, like as a like parenting culture, or maybe as a society, like stop telling like each gender what they can and what they cannot do. I think how do we get more women entrepreneurs is just that maybe we just need more role model. We need more success stories to help inspire more women to be an entrepreneur.
Welcome to the MHV podcast. We speak with leading founders, VCs, and operators on their journey in Southeast Asia. Learn more at www.monkshill.com. Hey Shi Ling, really excited to have you on the MHV podcast. You are a founder who is really building out something special in the UI space, and you have an amazing story that I'm excited to share. Could you share a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Well, I am a software engineer. I founded UI-licious. I'm the CEO of UI-licious, and basically what we are very focused on is user interface test automation, and it's something that I'm very passionate about after I started working as a software engineer and finding out how difficult it is to make good software. Building good software is really hard.
Amazing. And there's been a lot of amazing customer testimonials and a lot of love for your product. And of course, you're making it much, much easier as well, which is everybody's dream. But before we get and talk about the amazing company itself, love to hear about you early on. So they say, our engineers, do they start as kids, or is it something that it happens to them over time? Were you always, destined to be an engineer?
When I was growing up, I feel like if you ask me what did I want to be when I grew up, I would have two answers. One is I want to be like Indiana Jones. I want to swim around in a tomb. But I also want to wear a lab coat like Inspector Gadget. So I think it was, I had this like sense of curiosity, and I really liked playing with Lego was one of my favorite toys. So I spent a lot of time playing Lego, and I think maybe that's where it sort of built my interest in sort of putting things together and seeing, like, just putting things together is a lot of fun for me. And I think when things were broken in school, like if a friend broke a mechanical pencil, I'm always like the go-to fixer and the fix-it Felix of the classroom.
Well, I mean, since you're a founder and engineer, I guess you are Indiana Jones and a research person at the same point now. So you managed to fulfill both dreams.
Yeah, I just need a lab coat, though, a white lab coat, and you'll be complete.
So tell us more about that. So you had Legos and going on, and obviously lots of people are problem solvers and, kind of doing like little problems and mechanical. I mean, even as a kid, I was also playing with Legos a lot. And in fact, I also did a little bit of, Micro Mouse and Lego Mindstorm robotics as well. It's just that, and I even went to the computer club, for example. It's just that I never ended up becoming a computer engineer. I always ended up being on the soft side of it. Whereas on your side, you actually decided to become much more of an engineer, right? To deepen that practice of it. So what do you think was that part of it? Why did you decide to do that?
I think a large part of it was because of my brother. So my brother is 6 years older than me, and he started out with both of us playing video games together. So I think I was like a lot of kids my age, but I've said a lot of kids my age that played video games were boys, and I was like, I'm gonna grow up and be a video game developer. That sounds like a great idea. And then I started with doing things that you shouldn't be doing to access video games when you don't have money.
Okay, were you like running cracking video games on
Correct.
LimeWire or
Uh,
Kazaa?
yeah, yeah. And then I figured out how to automate my computer so that I can like sort of cheat at video games with mods and like automatic clickers, for example.
Wait. You
Yeah.
mean automated clickers on single player games or multiplayer games?
Oh, that was new pets.
Oh, okay. So new multiplayer games. Okay, that.
Yeah, yeah.
So will you be like a
Like,
billionaire on your pets? If
oh
you was
yeah,
like,
I'm a billionaire on new
oh,
pets.
I was a peasant then because I was not even a billionaire. I was just going like a normal human person going
Yeah.
to.
In fact, I learned HTML from Neopets because I wanted to tell everyone about my really cute cat-based new pet. So I wanted to write a story about my new pet, and they had this feature called pet page, and that's where I learned HTML. And I tried to make my scroll bar glitter. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing. I think the maximum of hacking I did was I would put I think I mapped my fire key on MapleStory to control on my keyboard, and then I put like a CD case onto the keyboard so that it could just press shoot while I'm got lazy holding the control key.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so that's amazing. So there you are, kind of exploring that hacking dynamic, and obviously your brother played a big part of it. Was it like, because my sister and I, we also like game together, and what was interesting was that it was kind of like not the world's happiest friendliest place. I was always a bit, my sister was always better than me at first person shooters, right, like Counter-Strike and everything, so she always got into all the clans, right, the MP5 gang, the SOG clan, and then I was like nowhere as good as her. But also, she got all the harassment on all on the servers, right? On Counter Strike, because everyone's like running around going A/S/L, right? I don't know. For those who don't know, it means like age/sex/location. And as children, we will be like noobs and answer that honestly and get harassed.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember. I think I was a kid. I borrowed my brother's account to play real time strategy game, and then people were asking me, "How old are you?" I'm like, "I'm 9 years old." But people were actually pretty nice to me. Surprising. Or maybe I'm pretty dense, so all the insults just flew past my head because I didn't understand.
Maybe that time was a purer place. So there you are, obviously, you're just learning all these things. And what was it like? Because you started talking about how you were learning and went on to learn engineering, etc. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think at some point when I was in after we finished O levels and everyone was thinking which JC they want to go to, which poly they want to go to, and for me, for some reason, I was very fixated on any of the JCs that had computer science. Yeah, so every single choice that I put on my JC list of schools that I want for my JC, all of them had a computer science course. Yeah, so I didn't care which one as long as I got into one, and I really wanted to learn computer science. I think I probably I had this kind of mentality like if I'm just gonna try all the subjects and find out what I really like, what would really stick to me. And I never tried computer science before, but I know I'm interested in it, so let's just give that a try. And it turns out I really like it. It's super fun. I think the first time I wrote a computer program, I was like, "Whoa, this is like magic." Yeah. And if you ever play role playing games with me, I always choose the wizard. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Now we know what's the correlation. Equals causation. There you go.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're a wizard, you're learning coding, and then you actually chose to double down on it, right? At a university level as well. So what was that like?
So I went to Singapore Management University and I took information systems. And And it was actually pretty refreshing as compared to junior college. Junior college, you're just sitting in a lecture hall, listening to the teacher tell you what to do. It's just a very one-way street of teaching. But SMU was interesting because it was it was super interactive. Even if the teacher is giving a seminar, they will forcefully ask students to answer questions as they are doing the seminar. It's a much smaller classroom as well. It's about as compared to like 100 people lecture hall, it's like a 40 person classroom. And one thing that is unique about SMU is the information system course is that is there's a lot of projects. We are infamously known, and now they have changed the name of the school, but back then it was called School of Information System. It's now called School of Computer Science and Information System, I think SCIS. But back then, when I was still in school, it's also SIS that also stood for School of Insufficient Sleep, because we had so many projects and the passing requirements for the projects were so high that you always see information system students like staying back in school, even sleeping in school. Like some of us went to the extent of bringing sleeping tents to school so that we could finish the projects. And then it's always hilarious when some of the projects they got stuck with bug and then they're up all night, and sometimes you laugh at them, but sometimes you also go and help them. So well, I really enjoyed my time at SMU, and I did very well. So and the professors also really liked to ask me to be their teaching assistant. So I was also teaching assistant for four of the different modules in school.
And during this time, you've been learning a lot, right, about engineering. Were there any particular themes about engineering that you particularly liked, or any projects that resonated with you?
I think one of the things that I came to learn and appreciate about studying at SMU was also learning how important understanding business is to engineering. I think that's where being in SMU, they are very good at telling you, making you be focused on acquiring this business sense of why are we building an IT system, what is the outcomes that we're supposed to get with an IT system. And now that I'm running my own company and managing my own engineers, you can see that there are engineers who are able to. We have a like very long roadmap. There's always like an infinite to-do list, but the really good engineers know exactly which features to prioritize and how to what the business really needs, and they will also give a feedback and say, hey boss, I don't think this is what the users will do. Our users will actually try to use it this way instead. Yeah, so actually that is the soft aspect of engineering that I came to appreciate more and more. Yeah, there's one particular course that I took, which is called interactive design and prototyping, which in that course I had to do a lot of like paper drawings of like low fidelity prototypes and show it to people. And there's actually no coding involved in this particular course. And when I graduated, I thought, oh, that's kind of like the one of the most useless course that I ever took. Like anyone can draw, right? I could just ask like the business team to do the drawings, right? And it turns out when I first joined my after graduating the first company I joined, the boss gave me a very abstract problem to a feature to build a feature with very abstract requirements to build. So I really didn't know what he wants. So I don't want to write a line of code because it was so vague. So I decided to start drawing prototypes, and then I show the prototypes to him and say, "Is this what you want? Do you want this is this what you want the users to be doing? Like from this screen to this screen to this screen? This is what you mean, right?" And then he will say yes, no, yes, no. And then he'll give me a feedback and say, Shi Ling, you're the only engineer that did this. And that was amazing. I was like, wow, okay.
That's interesting. So you actually were already thinking about that flow from, even that time, right? And there you are, and you chose to actually decide to continue being an engineer upon graduation. So why that? Because a lot of folks from SMU, right, they choose, even though they took the engineering major, they choose to go into business, for example, more that side versus the engineering side. So why?
I think I really like programming, and I just really, really wanted to still do hands-on programming. So I didn't really want to always be talking to a stakeholder, understanding requirements, and then talking to engineers and telling what the stakeholders want. I think maybe it's also because I'm an introvert, and then talking to people all day. I know that's my job now as a CEO. I have learned to accept that and embrace it. But in the past, when I first graduated, I was like very, very introverted. I just want to code and not talk to people all day. Like best if only once a day, like one at most one meeting a day. Yeah. Now I'm okay with it though.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're one meeting a day at least, right? What was it that you learned upon your first job, right? Because there you are, a lot of people, they have that transition, right? From, kind of like the academic side of engineering towards more of that practical job training and hands-on experience. So what did you learn from that experience personally?
I think what I learned from that experience is process. Well, one thing is process is really, really important. And that's something so the first job that I joined is advertising technology startup. There were already 30 employees in the company when I joined. But I think the problem that I start to realize after 1 year into the job is that the startup still ran a little bit cowboy style. So there's not a lot of process in place. There was the QA process was really informal, and like as engineers, it wasn't the managers telling us like what the process is us figuring out how it should be, and and some it got really, really confusing when they change people to other teams, and the other team have their own cowboy style of project management. So the lack of process of it affects the product quality. One thing, because wasn't a review process, and then the second thing was that it also affected morale because the schedule started sleeping, and when the schedule was sleeping, the manager start to find people to blame, like why is the feature not done. And yeah, so that really had a negative impact on morale. So I think that's sort of the learnings I took into building up UI-licious when I started speaking with my co-founder CTO. The first thing that one of the earliest things that we talked about was as we scale from like 5 engineers to 10 engineers, or maybe like even 2 engineers, me and Eugene alone coding in the early days, like what is the process? And we had like some hard rules about when can deployment be done and when can it not be done. We're very clear about like no weekend deployments, no Friday deployments, because we don't want surprises. We had too many firefighting in our Havoc Cowboy days, which we want to stop at UI-licious. And also, I think we want to also be the what's that the at least in the Singapore developer community, we want to be a role model for other Singapore engineering teams of what's the good way to do engineering to build good software products. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a nice heroic Indiana Jones in a mission, I guess, because it's tough, right, to be a good role model for this, because engineering is tough, and to do that in a startup environment, especially for a new product in a new category, can be tough. And on that note, obviously, you met your co-founder and talking about your strategy and thinking behind it. So talk us more about why you decided to, leave your company and join Entrepreneur First. So what was your thinking behind that? Was it because you wanted to be a founder at that point of time? Was it because you wanted to explore something? What was the rationale for why you were exploring?
To be honest, I never thought about being an entrepreneur, but I think my parents were doing subliminal messaging because my mom would sneakily put business books into my bookshelf and say, "Girl, I think you should read this as a smart kid, rich kid, poor kid." But then I never gave it much thought until it was like maybe one firefighting night too many that I thought, why am I working so hard for someone else's money? I was like ranting to my mom, and my mom was like, exactly. And I think it's just maybe the stars align. I had this random email from the director of EFSG at that point of time. They were just setting up the first cohort in Singapore, and then he reached out to me to have coffee, and it was actually a really random email. And I didn't know why I said yes. I guess I was really curious. Like I'm as curious as a cat. I'm really, really curious. So I went for a coffee talk with him, and then I got convinced to join EF and try. I think another part of it was because I was young, so back then was like I was 25 and not married, no kids. So like the risk for me is low to quit my job and start something new. So I thought like I just try. Why not? Just and if it doesn't work out, software engineers are super employable, so I'm not worried about finding another job.
Yeah, that's a nice way actually to think about risk, right? Which is that you have a low downside risk because you know you can get another job, but there's also high upside in terms of exploration and just learning about the space, right? And curiosity scratching. So there you are. And what was it like? Because a lot of people go through accelerators and programs, and they also start going through the co-founder matching process, and also you're going through the product market fit process as well, right? So talk us through a little bit about what's it like to not necessarily within Entrepreneur First, but overall the whole process of finding a co-founder and finding the right idea that worked for both of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think me and Eugene, we are quite different people. So when we first joined EF, they had us write our idea in the idea board, and I didn't really have much of a lot of ideas that I wanted to try. I know what sort of things that are like education or environmental things. So that's what I'm interested in. But then there's this one very specific problem I wanted to solve, which was I had a concept in my mind of how to fix user interface test automation, which we can talk about later on. And those were the three things I put on my idea board, like all things that I'm interested in board. And then Eugene has like 20 things on his list, a lot of very specific things. It's very if you speak to him on any day and bring up any topic, he will tell you a lot of ideas about he has for that one particular topic. But anyway, it just so happened that on his idea board, he also has this one particular thing that he's super annoyed by, which is user interface testing. That he said, "Hey, you want to try working out on this together?" So I shared with him like what I was thinking of, like a prototype might look like, and then he thought it was like, yeah, I think that should be the way how it should be done. Let's do it. And EF has the founder matching team, but I was lucky on the first try that this stuck for 5 years and ongoing. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the next part of it was we went to EF to present our idea, and Mary, one of the directors, and then just fantastic. That's great. Now I know you guys like to code because you guys are engineers, but don't put your butt on the chair. I don't want to see you in the office. You've got to go out and get 5 customers. She was really fierce about it. It was, and I protested because I said, "But Anne Marie, we don't have a prototype. How do we go and get customers? You sell them your idea." I was like, "Huh? How do you sell ideas?" So so what we did, I think that's something that people we were quite interested to hear how do we get our first customers. Was what we did was we wanted to test whether there was actually what the problem that we face, is it a problem that a lot of software teams are also facing. So we created a survey to ask, and then send it out to 40 of our friends to ask them down to meet us either face to face or virtually to answer some questions about what are the how do they test in their company. Is it manually, automatically? Is it who is involved in testing? How long does it take to test? Do they find it a process that needs to be improved? And last question, the most important one: if we have a prototype, are you interested to be a pilot or a beta pilot? And we actually got like 30 yeses out of the 40 people who responded. And from there, the 30 yeses, we actually got them to beat us, and we promised them that we will build a prototype in 2 months. But they need to pay us $500 for the pilot. Yeah, and it was quite cheap actually. Yeah, and from there we got 11 yeses. And I was like, wow, nice. Yeah. So we first got our first 5 yeses. We ran to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, we got our first 5 yeses to five people signed their decision makers signed and said yes to paying us $500 for a prototype. We are going to do code now. And she was like, yes, go do code. And like we pumped it out in 2 weeks. And yeah, the reason why we rushed to pump it out in 2 weeks was because in 2 weeks from the day where we got our 5 contract was we were going to attend JS conference. We Eugene actually had was a speaker there, and then I snuck in. All right, I bought a ticket. I didn't sneak in illegally. I bought a real ticket, but then I wrote they have this lightning talk session, so I wrote a proposal. I want to talk about user interface test automation and demo my cool little neat little thing, and that's where things started to get more exciting and people were actually excited. We some of the signed contracts were from there later on. And then I guess from then on, we after getting a signed contract, we were very committed to it. Like that, it suddenly become very serious. Like, it wasn't like a fun game. Like we actually want to deliver on this, and we got feedback after the prototype that the concept was quite refreshing and it was actually useful. It helped them with productivity and it helped them to catch bugs much early on and improve their product quality. So and they will continue paying us. So that's how we end up doing this for 5 years.
And so obviously the benefits are clear, like you mentioned, it's easier, it's more convenient, you catch more bugs. And obviously it's a problem because both you and your co-founder were irritated by the problem enough to write it down as one of the top 5 things. Just for a layman who didn't do Lego, didn't do coding and engineering, why is it such a pain in the rear?
Yeah, so the thing is, when we use web applications or let's say even mobile application, when we use software these days, we don't just use it on Chrome on IE like 20 years ago anymore. We use it on Firefox, we use it on Chrome, we use it on Safari, and all the other small random browsers that are on the market as well. And then there's also the mobile devices, which even if you have Chrome and Safari on the mobile device, it's not the same as the desktop-based version one. But plus, there's also different resolutions that you need to test. So there are different for one screen, it needs to be able to display correctly on the desktop resolution and the mobile resolution. So meaning every time we build a single page, we need to test it across the browsers, across the different resolution, the different devices. And sometimes you get very funny quirks like this bug only happens on a Safari mobile device, maybe exactly at version 10.13, and we need to somehow go and procure the device for it, which is another difficult pain, and then to go test it and try to debug it. So it's a huge pain to make sure that the software that you're building works across all browsers. That's why if you spoke to most engineers, or that's why actually you see a lot of companies they sometimes put a banner that says we don't support Firefox. In fact, I think this app this Fire Riverside FM app that we are using right now for the podcast, I tried my default browser is Firefox. I open it on Firefox and it say no, we only do Chrome, and that's the state of browsers right now. Is that we are on this mono culture of Chrome browsers, simply because testing across browsers is so difficult. Yeah. So I wanted to automate it. We had humans automating it, but at some point, as you add more features, it's the number of things that you need to test just grows exponentially because there's more permutation of user actions to do. So it's definitely not scalable to do it with humans alone, and we felt that we need to get we need to make it automated, and then there were actually ways to automate browser testing. The technology existed 12 years ago, so 12 years, I think more than 12 years ago actually. Selenium was created for the purpose of automating browsers. However, in order to use Selenium, you need to be an engineer. And if you speak to most engineering managers, they will tell you, "Hi, you want me to put an engineer on software testing to write automation test automation script. I don't even have enough engineers to write do features. I cannot spare any engineers to write scripts for you. I think you better hire some interns to go and press buttons and check for us. So we are a lot of companies are stuck in this state of like they cannot automate because they don't have the skilled labor to write the automation. But manual testing is not scaling, and they are not able to. And so they release products that are like minimally tested. And we get a lot of buggy products on the market because of that. So we wanted to create this UI-licious because we wanted to make creating this automated test script as simple as possible. And what we noticed is that if the designers, the marketing team, the business stakeholders, they're already writing things like user stories, which is something like I go to this website URL, I fill in username, I fill in password, I click on sign up, then finally I should be at dashboard. So why can't we make these user stories into a test script? The test script itself. Why do we actually need to need to get an engineer to script the actual and wire up to the actual UI to automate it? The concept of UI-licious is such that you can turn all these user stories that are written in a high level like pseudo English language and just have that run against any kind of UI and it will work and will tell you whether your UI works or not.
Amazing. I think it's quite clear because what you're basically saying is the world sucks because there's so many devices, so many browsers, so many different features, and engineering cost is so expensive that when there is a problem, it's hard to trace down, it's hard to replicate, and it's hard to even identify and fix within a time constraint. And it's quite amazing that you're able to tackle all of that. And so one interesting thing is that obviously you've been doing all of this in the context of not only being an engineer, but also as learning to become a founder, right? And I don't think you did that just by reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So what did you learn along the way? And I know that you've been working closely with Justin Win, one of our partners here as well. But I'm just kind of curious, what have you been learning along the way as a founder over the years?
Over the years, I think I had, besides Justin, I've also worked with a number of our angel investors who were very good strategic advisors. I really didn't know much as a first-time founder. I was just jumping into the deep end of the pool and just trying to find my way to swim up to the surface. So, I think I had this naive thought that, oh, if the product is great, people will talk about it, and that's like my marketing strategy. It's a sucky marketing strategy. But later on, we 2 years in, Royston, one of our investors, was asking like, do you guys do marketing? He said, yeah, we go to conferences and tell people about it. Like, no, this like paid marketing. I was like, what paid marketing? Digital marketing? Oh, we did. We put one ad. One ad only. I said, yeah. What? No, that's not the way to do digital marketing. You should do like 20 ads, collect data, and optimize. Then repeat every month. 20 ads, collect data, optimize. I said, what? Okay, I didn't know that was how it was supposed to be done, and it turns out that that was like one of the most insightful things that I learned was that marketing was actually data science. I always thought marketing was a creative thing. Like you need to be an artistic, creative, but a poet to be able to draw people into your website and convince them to buy your product. But actually, it's a science. There's a lot of science behind it, and I think Justin was pretty helpful. He's also a pretty data oriented person, so that's where he helps us to look at the what we're working on and sort of give us sort of directions, more like guiding questions to help us on things that we may have overlooked. That's my learning point as a founder was that actually a lot of things that seems like art was actually there's a lot of science to it. Like even pricing is a science, and we experimented with pricing a lot as well. So in the past we will price super cheap, and then we realized that that wasn't healthy for us because we were getting users that were not like the serious business users until we raised the prices, and we found a lot of serious businesses would still pay for it anyway, and we are less stressed by the volume of customer support tickets that we had to handle. So yeah, that's another learning point, that pricing is also a science.
One interesting thing that we were discussing in our earlier conversations over time is that your reflection that you feel like you're one of the few female founders and engineers there, right? And that you're in this awkward position of being a leader, right? And representative and role model to other folks in the space. So, how do you feel about that, and why do you think that's happening?
Well, I feel quite always, to be honest, when we were at EF, and we were, between me and Eugene at the early days, we were just we didn't have official titles like CEO and CTO until we had to do demo day, and then we actually then had to figure out who's going to be CEO and who's going to be CTO, because the CEO has to do a demo day, and I was an introvert, so I was like, no, I don't want to be a CEO. And then the winning argument for him was like, sure, there's not enough female CEO and software engineers. You need to be representative. And then like he knew how to push my buttons, because I've always been talking about how there's not enough growing up. There's I feel quite lonely that there's no lesser and lesser women in my class, software engineering classes, and even joining the EF cohort, there were only 4 women, and we were the only team that had consisted of one female founder in that first cohort. So yeah, that cemented my decision. Okay, I'm going to be CEO, and I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm just going to go face it. And hopefully that inspires more people. And it actually did. I was quite surprised when, so subsequently, I got invited to Coding Girls, one of the panels, and then many months later, 2 women came up to me and told me that they were actually inspired by what I was doing. One of them actually founded her own company, like had the courage to found her own company after seeing that I was being successful at well, I can do it, basically. Women can do it. Yeah. So I was quite proud of myself.
Amazing. That's awesome. And I'm glad that you did that, because, it's something that we need more of, right? And what do you think that people could do more to be more supportive of the environment for, at one level, obviously, women engineers, and another level, so women founders as well?
Mm. I think for women engineers, I think it has to start from young. But one of the things that I noticed when I was growing up was, if you watch a lot of children's TV show back in our time, they are very gendered. Like spinning toys are only for boys. Mecha and cars are only for boys. So about like the girl who really likes car and wants to be an F1 driver, like it will feel very out of place. So I think playtime should be, or anything like Asa has to start from young lah. I think we shouldn't be assigning genders to toys. That's one of the things. Like children should be free to do any kind of activity that they are interested in. I think one of the things that I heard when I was growing up was, Shi Ling, why you like video games so much, or why do you like computers so much? It's very tomboy. How are you gonna get a boyfriend? All the guys will think you're not cute. Like, good thing I didn't care, so I just did it anyway. I just did my own thing anyway. But there's a lot of women who care about these kind of comments. So I think that's what turned some women off in like pursuing, even though we're really good at science or really good at engineering. That what turned people off from like being perceived as a nerd, by like stop being interested in like nerdy topics. Yeah. So that's, I think that's where we can start, like as a like parenting culture, or maybe as a society, like stop telling like each gender what they can and what they cannot do. Then how do we I think how do we get more women entrepreneurs is just that maybe we just need more role model. We need more success stories to help inspire more women to be an entrepreneur. But then there's also the reality that there's a lot of women who are like still burdened by duties at home. So that's one of the things that is still a big challenge for women. It's very hard problem to solve. There's no simple solution to that. We just need to. I think that's something that over time, think things will change lah. Yeah. Then, yeah, I think so far as an entrepreneur, I did find that I received quite a lot of support from the entrepreneur community. I think one of the things, maybe this is where women need to help themselves also. That's why I tell my so I also volunteer as in Junior Dev Singapore. There are and one of the things I noticed there's a difference between my female mentees and my male mentees is that my male mentees ask me for help all the time. Like they always come to me for help. Whereas female mentees are very shy to ask for help. And I don't know how to help you if I don't know you need help. You see, so that's one thing about maybe female entrepreneurs. They also need to learn to ask for help or help themselves and find their people that are willing to help them. I think there are people that are willing to help them. They just don't know it. So perhaps like setting up mentorship circles could also be something that would help women entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's a lot of good advice, both on the structural level and the personal level. On that note, you yourself were one of those people, right? 10 years ago, right? Still learning about what it meant to be an engineer and also evolving yourself, not just as an engineer in terms of skill set, yet also in terms of whether to choose to become working for someone else to working for yourself. And also thirdly, also, moving from an introvert to choosing to have more than one meeting a day, right? And so on that note, if you could travel back in time 10 years ago, right, that would be back in 2011, right? So what advice would you give yourself back then if you had a time travel machine?
I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I was in my early days of being a startup entrepreneur. Like I keep worrying that I'm not enough, that I don't know enough, and like you need to be a much older person to be a very wise person to start a entrepreneur. And that was like the first myth that I want to clear to my younger self. It's like you don't need to know that much. Like actually a lot of things about starting a business, you cannot learn. The only way to gain experience is to actually just go in and do it. There's no way you can work in a company, a startup. Even if you're working in a startup company, you never get the experience of get the experience you need to start your own company. You get some experience, but then not the only real way to gain experience is to actually start the company yourself. So don't worry about not having enough experience. You'll never have enough. That's the truth. Yeah, I think the second one about the second piece of why I had imposter syndrome was I had this misconception again back to not enough role models that all CEOs, because I only ever seen Steve Jobs and all the other like male technology CEOs. So I always thought like, to be a CEO, you must be a tall white guy in a business suit, or at least a black shirt and blue jeans. Steve Jobs. So I was like, I'm just I keep thinking like, okay, nobody's going to take me seriously because I'm a woman. But actually people do. Yeah. So don't worry so much.
Wow, I love that. I love that frank truth to yourself. And honestly, I think just the frank truth to all of us today. So on that note, I'd love to like summarize the three big themes that I got from this conversation. The first, of course, is thank you so much for sharing about your time growing up as an engineer, right? Who happens to be a child, happens to be a teenager, gaming, with your brother and hacking Neopets. And now we know who the billionaires with the income inequality on Neopets were. And then going on to obviously learn computer science at junior college and university, and actually learning how to put that together in terms of your early career as well from a skills perspective. And there was just a tremendous amount of insight actually in terms of that overall evolution. The second is thank you so much for sharing your overall perspective as a founder, right? What it means to transition from an engineer to becoming a founder and CEO, and what that meant as the product market fit in terms of like it being a problem, and then you also explaining why it was such a pain in the rear for so many folks, and why it was a pain for yourself and your co-founder, and how you two both matched, and also actually why you chose to step up in the role together, and how you both worked together, and how you both eventually went out to find your first customers before coding, and then eventually coding, and then eventually finding many more sales contracts by hacking your way into the conference, and all of those learnings about how some things are less of an art and more of a science actually. So it's actually a lot of learnings there about that maturation as a founder and CEO. And lastly, actually, I think we got to hear about your reflections in terms of representation from a gender lens, in terms of your own personal learnings about what it meant for you to be able to have this path yourself, and also what it means how you would encourage people to raise their kids in the future, as well as how you would encourage people to be more structural, right, in terms of either helping other women, and also I think your reflections on how women should also help themselves in terms of peer mentorship and support as well, to help them to get to the next level as well. So I think it's amazing that you are a role model. And as I said, I do think you are indeed actually did make your dream come true in childhood, right? Like you are both a lab coat engineer, with no lab coat. You can always wear the black turtleneck now if you want. And you also are Indiana Jones, right, as a founder and CEO. So I think dreams do come true.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for having me here. I think it was a fun conversation for me as well.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the MHV podcast, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. Go to www.monkshill.com for more founders' journeys, company building advice, and insights into regional tech trends.